Hi everyone. Now if you're watching this video, chances are you are either signed up to learn about OBS and what it can do, or you're probably going to be developing some materials and some courses for us. So let's just jump right in and sort of learn what OBS is about. Now, briefly, OBS is simply just a streaming tool and a video recording tool that helps you sort of present your video, present your materials in a more polished fashion. Now, without talking too much into it, so let's just jump right in and get started with installing OBS, shall we? Now, in order to install OBS, all you need to do is go to obsproject.com, or you can simply do a simple Google search on Google. Just type in OBS, and it should bring you directly to this link right here. Now, if you're on a Mac platform, you download the version for the Mac, and if you're on Windows, like most of us are, then you download the version for Windows. Both of them are pretty much the same in the way that they operate. They might have a little bit of difference in terms of some features, but largely it's unnoticeable, and the overall running of the software should not be impacted. Okay, so again, go ahead to download the link, whether it's Windows or Mac, and then once you got it, just run the software, let it install, and then we can start firing up OBS. All right. Okay, so once you're done installing OBS, all you need to do is look for OBS on your computer, either on your desktop or on your applications folder. Click on OBS and it should pop up. Now, this is basically the main interface of OBS. So let's start going basically counterclockwise, and I'll run through each of these boxes along the way. So the biggest one that you see here, this is called the preview screen. Now, everything that you record, everything that you show, everything that you present will basically show up on here. So the idea here is that you get a large window for you to see what's going on with your recording and what's going on with your lectures. So if you're popping a PowerPoint, if you're popping your face, in this case, I'm recording this training with OBS. So right now, the preview window is basically showing my face. So if you basically anything that you want students to see will be recorded, will be shown through this preview window. Okay, so now back to OBS, and you'll see, so this is the preview window. Now going counterclockwise, the first box on the left, you will see scenes. By default, you will have one scene created for you. So not to worry if you don't have it. You can always create it by pressing the plus button. We'll go through that in the later stages of this video. Next up, you have sources. This is where you bring in all the important materials like your camera, your PowerPoint, your audio, pictures, logos, if anything. So sources is where most of your materials will basically live in. And think of scenes as folders for your sources. So you could have multiple scenes, and each of them has different sources or the same sources, depending on the type of scenes that you're trying to build. Okay, so you have folders, and then you have the files. Files are under the sources. So these, you have scenes right here, and then you have your sources on the right, and then we'll have your audio mixer. Now by default, you might have an audio mixer already in your default configuration. So you might have something already showing when you're doing a fresh install of OBS. So that's okay. That's probably your internal mic. But if you don't have it, not to worry as well. We will build it as we go. All right. You have scene transitions. By default, it's usually set to either cut or a fade. In your computer, it might look like a fade, and the duration is usually set at 300 milliseconds. You can reduce it, and the difference between a cut and fade is basically a cut is a straight change without any transitions in between, and a fade would be a gradual gradation from one scene to another scene. All right, much like a dissolve. Okay, so the longer the dissolve, the longer the fade will be. The longer the time, millisecond, the longer the dissolve will be. The shorter the time, the shorter the fade will be. So I usually keep it at about 100 milliseconds because I don't like it being too long. It feels very draggy. But it's up to you. It's a personal preference. And if you don't like a fade at all, just switch it to cut, and it will be a direct change. Okay? So back to this. This is audio mixer, scene transition. And next to it, we'll have controls. Here is where most of the magic happens, I would say. You have streaming, recording, virtual camera. Now, virtual camera is a feature that is only available in the newer installation of OBSs. So if you've downloaded OBS maybe in December or so, then December of 2020, then you would have virtual camera installed. If you don't have it, it's okay. It doesn't affect the way you record videos within your computer. But it is a nice feature to have if you're able to install an update. Okay, so back to this. You have studio mode, settings, and exit. Now, in this video, I will only cover a few things, primarily the recording feature, the settings, and the various input that you can have within the settings. So I will cover all these things at the end of the video, not at this point. So I'll come back to this shortly. Okay. So again, this is a basic overall interface of OBS. Just to give you a quick recap, this is the preview window where everything is shown here. And you have your scenes. Think of scenes as folders, all right? Where you change angles from one scene to the next scene to the next scene. And next to scenes, you have sources. That's where you have all your files, all your video inputs, all your audio inputs, all captured under sources. Audio mixer is where you manage and monitor your audio. And finally, you have controls. Oh, before I forget, you also have scene transitions. And you have your controls on your right. So that's basically the overall interface of OBS. Now, when you're using OBS, it's important to prepare your materials ahead of time. So right here in my desktop, I've prepared a few things for the purposes of this demo. And if you look at what I have here, I have a PowerPoint template, which is basically a standard PowerPoint note. Right? I also have a logo. So in this case, it's PSB Academy's logo. It's important for the logos or any pictures to be in a PNG format. And in case you don't know what a PNG format is, it's basically just a picture with a transparent background so that you're not taking up the whole space of the video. Okay, so you have, in this case, a logo, right? And you have another overlay. I'll show you how it works and why it's there. Okay, and of course, module titles. So if you're basically, you can create all this using Photoshop, but if you are helping us developing some materials, chances are you would have access to all these things already. So you have the titles, for example, elements of marketing, business marketing, accounting, so on and so forth. So as we build our sources later, you will get an idea of where all these files will show up and where all these titles will appear, right, in the process of building our scene. Okay, so again, just to make sure that you prepare all the materials ahead of time, and it's so that you're not basically struggling and confusing yourself by looking for your files all over your computer. All right, so again, prepare your materials ahead of time, and that should ensure that you have a smooth OBS experience. Alright, so now that you've installed OBS, you've learned the interface, and you've also prepared your files ahead of time, we can start building our scene. So let's jump back into OBS and build our scenes together. So the scenes panel, typically you would have one scene already created for you. All you need to do now is just right click on the scene and rename it and call it something that is familiar to you. Now, for the purposes of this training, we will be building 3 scenes, okay? One scene would be just showing the full screen of your face. Okay, so basically it's a talking head shot. Another scene would be a full screen of PowerPoint. And a third scene would be a full screen consisting both of PowerPoint and a portrait picture-in-picture of your face. Okay, you'll get you'll get what I mean when we get into it shortly. Okay, so let's go in and build our scenes together, shall we? So again, just right click on the scene and call the first one maybe full screen face. All right, that's okay. All right, so now under sources, you want to now start to bring in your webcam feed. And let's go to sources and click plus. And within there, just go to video capture device. Okay, you have all the other sources here, such as audio input, audio output. You have image if you're bringing in a picture, PNG, JPEG. You have, if you're bringing in a video, you're going to use VLC video source or perhaps media source. That works just as well. But for just to bring in your webcam or any sort of camera, you want video capture device. You're going to click on that. And in this case, just call your video capture device webcam. Click OK. Now, if it doesn't show, if your webcam should automatically be detected. If it is not detected, just go to device and select the webcam name for your laptop or for your desktop. Okay, whether it's Logitech, whether it's FaceTime HD. In this case, I'm using a MacBook, so it's called FaceTime HD camera. So if I click on that, my face should automatically detect it already. There you go. And use the highest preset available to you. In this case, I'll just choose high if it's available. If not, I'll just choose the largest one. There you go. Then click OK. Now you will notice that in this case, it's not filling up the whole screen. Right? So what you want to do now is you can either bring your cursor to the corner and drag it to fill up the screen. Okay, now this works just as well. Now if you don't want to do it this way, another option would be bring your cursor to your image, right click it, and look for transform. And under transform, you can select fit to screen. It should automatically fill up the whole screen for you. And if you're happy with the way it looks, such as adjusting your laptop, making sure that everything looks proper. If you're happy with this, all you need to do is go down here to your webcam sources. Right? Once you click on it, you should see two logos next to it. One is an I button. The I button will make any sources visible or invisible, right? Or you can just lock it. And once you lock, notice that the red borders around the image will disappear. You see that? All right. So once you lock it, you are unable to make any changes to your image. So no matter what you do to it, nothing will show up. All right. So if you want to make adjustments, all you need to do is unlock it, click on your webcam or click on your sources in this case, and then now you can make your various adjustments again. Okay. Now some of you, in your case, some of your webcams might have things like black borders on the sides or black borders on the top, in which case it's okay. It's a default configuration of your webcam. Nothing much you can do about it. So just stick to that, okay? Because if you drag it, if you drag that source, something that is square to be stretched out, then your face will be stretched out as well. So you don't want that to happen, okay? So again, back to this. If you're happy with this, then again, just lock it, keep it in place, and we're good. So now we already have one sources. Your webcam is now brought in. Now we have to bring in an audio source. All right, so let's go in. And through the same process again, do make sure that you're within the same scene. And under sources, bring in an audio input capture. So let's just call this mic. Click OK. And your device, all you need to do is choose a mic that is built in to your laptop. Now keep in mind that when you're choosing mics, if you have a USB mic plugged in, then you have to choose that one. If you have a large mic like this plugged in, then typically the name of the audio interface would show up. Now by default, if you're just using a simple laptop with your earphone, then usually your internal audio would be the default one. Okay, so let's jump back in, and in this case I'll just choose the built-in microphone and I'll click OK, and notice that my microphone is now detected on the bottom right here. Now when you're monitoring your audio, notice that my voice is basically peaking towards the red occasionally, once a while, right? So you want to avoid that. So you want to basically use this dial, right, to bring your audio levels down to a healthy level. So what I mean by healthy is basically in the region of pushing the boundaries of green and reaching yellow every once in a while. But you never ever want it to go to red color, because that would distort the audio and that would be too loud. Okay, so keeping it at
just past green and reaching yellow or hovering around yellow, that would be a healthy audio level. All right. So you have your audio here. So basically, if you look back at your sources, let me just remove window capture for this demo. All right. So at this point, right, if you're happy with everything, you should also lock your mic so that no adjustments can be made. You can still adjust your audio mixer volume here. So overall, under one scene, you already have a mic and you already have a webcam. So both your audio and your video would have been created at this point, and now you have one scene done. Now let's go on and create another scene, shall we? Now in order to create another scene, all you need to do is click plus, and remember, scene 2, we wanted to call it PowerPoint. All right. Now what we want to do now is to bring in the same audio source from the first scene, the full face scene, into the PowerPoint scene so that you are able to narrate through your PowerPoint as you teach. So in order to do that, you go to your scene, the first scene, full face, right, full screen, and you right click on your mic. There you will see a number of choices, and you can choose copy, and you go back to your scene and you paste it in the source folder of your scene, of PowerPoint scene. All right, so you paste reference, and then you should have your audio mic brought in. So let me just repeat that again. Okay, again, you go to your full screen, right, and then you right click on your mic, click copy, and then you go back to the PowerPoint scene, and then you right click and paste the source, right? And now you want to bring in a PowerPoint file. How do you go about doing that? Now remember earlier when we've already prepared a few PowerPoint materials, one PowerPoint material, in fact it's called PowerPoint template, right? You've seen it at the beginning of the video. So we're going to go back to that and we're going to configure PowerPoint to make sure that it works with OBS, okay? Now in order to do that, you need to go back to your desktop, open up the materials that you've prepared ahead of time, and in this case open up your PowerPoint template. Okay, there you go. Now, there's a few things that you need to prepare when you're using PowerPoint with OBS. Namely, you need to make sure that PowerPoint does not take up the entire screen of your computer or your laptop. Otherwise, you wouldn't have available screen real estate to monitor both PowerPoint and OBS. So you want to play PowerPoint at full screen, but you don't want it to take up the entire screen. You want it to take up a space of an individual window. In order to do that, you need to make some adjustments in the slideshow tab. So let me just show you right now what I mean. So when you're in PowerPoint, all you need to do is open up your slideshow, right? Open up your deck. Everything should look pretty normal at this point. There's a few adjustments that you first need to make. First of all, under Design, you want to format your PowerPoint and the slide size to make sure that it's widescreen. Okay, make sure that it's under widescreen. Now, most PowerPoints, if it's 5 years or older, it will look something like that, which is 4:3, right? You want to change that into widescreen so that it fills up the overall screen of OBS. Okay. So once you're done with this, go to Slideshow. Okay, here is where you tweak PowerPoint to make sure that it works with OBS within a small individual window. So under the Slideshow tab, go to Setup Slideshow and make sure that Browsed by an individual window is checked. Most cases, it would be the first box. You do not want this. You want to check Browsed by an individual window. Once you're done, click OK. And what should happen is that when you choose to present PowerPoint, it would only fill up a window and not the entire screen of your computer. Okay. So again, slideshow, set up slideshow, and browsed by an individual window. Click OK, and then you can present it. Now what you want to do at this point is to make sure that your PowerPoint is, you can move your cursor to the side and make adjustments to a point where you do not see any black borders. So sometimes this could happen, sometimes it could be this, right? So you want to bring it to the corner of your screen and resize it to a point where you do not see any black bars. Now this looks good. So when you're at this point, feel free to resize it to your liking. If you want to make it slightly bigger, and that should work. All right, that looks fine to my eyes. So let's just minimize this window. And then you have PowerPoint open. Okay, so now let's just go back to OBS and start building our PowerPoint source. So to get that, you want to capture the window that is this one. You want to capture this window, all right? So let me cancel this. So you want to capture this window in OBS. So the way you do that is that under Sources, click the plus icon and go to Window Capture and just call it PPT, all right? One thing to keep in mind is that OBS does not allow you to have two of the same names for scenes and sources. All right, so you need to have separate names. So you need to be creative about this. So what I do is that under scenes, I call it the full PowerPoint spelling, and under sources, I just stick to call it PPT. All right. Once you're done, a window should pop up, and then what you need to do is you need to choose. Now, nothing will show up here. Okay, so the idea here is you need to make sure that you're not in full screen mode anymore. Okay, and double click, and you should be able to see PowerPoint as one of the options. Okay, so keep in mind right now, excuse me. So right now what's going on is that I have OBS and PowerPoint in the same screen. Okay, so you want to resize it to make sure that they are both visible to you. All right. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Okay, so again, double click on the source, and you need to choose PowerPoint as your window. And once you see it pop up, click OK. And again, what would happen naturally is that it will not fill up the whole screen. So what you need to do is you need to make adjustments. So you either right click, you can drag until it fills up the whole screen. So what I normally do is I right click, go to transform, and fit to screen. Now, this is okay, all right? By default, you already have PowerPoint in your OBS at this point, but I am not comfortable with the whole idea of seeing all these black bars on the sides here. So what I want to do is I want to click on the PowerPoint and I want to drag it even bigger than its original source file. So you can keep going, and just to make sure that all the black bars are removed. Now, if you go above, if your borders go beyond the size of the screen, you will see all these zebra lines on the sides of the box, right? You see all these zebra lines right here. That's okay. Once you click outside of the zebra box, it will go away. So if you're okay with how this looks, because I don't want to see all these borders above all these options here. So I want to adjust it so that everything is removed. And now this looks okay to my eyes. Okay, now once you're okay with it, click outside of the box and the zebra lines will disappear. And if you're comfortable with how this looks, lock it up. Okay, and as usual, if you want to make adjustments again, just go back to the box, unlock it, and you can make your adjustments again. All right, so go back, lock it, lock the mic, and there we go. So now we have two scenes created. One is a full screen scene, and another one is a full screen with PowerPoint and audio. So let's just do a quick test run and see how this works, okay? So back to this. So when you click on full screen face, it should be this scene right here, okay? Right there, all right. And then if you toggle back to PowerPoint, your audio should be the same. The only thing different is that now you're able to control PowerPoint and basically conduct your lectures as you go, okay? Now, this will work better and it will be more comforting to your eyes if you have an external monitor to work with. In that case, the screen real estate would be much larger. But if you don't, if you're okay with working off a laptop, this is some sort of a limitation that you have to learn to work around with. Okay, so again, so you have the PowerPoint window active. That's where you can start delivering your lecture and start giving commentary and so on and so forth. And if you want to go back to your screen to show your face, just click on the scene and now you're back to full screen mode. Okay, so now you have scene 1, which is the full screen face, and scene 2, PowerPoint created. So next up, we want to create a third scene, which is a scene that has your face and PowerPoint together. All right, so that will be in the next part. Okay, so if you're able to follow me until this point, you're doing great. You're doing very well. Now we've created 2 scenes, right? One would be the full screen face. Another one would be a scene with PowerPoint. Both of them have audio coming off from your mic. Now we're going to create a third scene incorporating both elements of yourself and PowerPoint into one individual frame. Okay, let's jump right into OBS and start doing that. All right. So now that we are in OBS again, okay, now you want to create a third scene. Okay, pretty simple. Click plus and call it face and PowerPoint. Click OK. Now again, with the same concept of duplicating or copying sources, you want to bring in the mic and the PowerPoint from this source. Right click, copy, and then you go to face and PowerPoint. Now what you want to do here is paste reference. Okay, great. So now you have 2 basically similar scenes going on here. Now you want to also bring in the camera, which is your webcam. So your webcam source is under your scenes, right? It's under your full screen face. So I'm going to go in there and right click on your webcam, again copy, and paste it on your face and PowerPoint scene. There you go. Once you're done, don't have to lock anything yet. You're not finished. Now you want to bring in an image to basically tie everything together. All right. So going back to the folders of the files that I've prepared for you earlier on, you have a lot of overlay options, right? So one of them is called a scene 3 overlay, where you have 2 big boxes. You'll know what I mean when I show you in a moment's time. So going back to your desktop, you will see that there is, under OBS materials, you have scene 3 overlay, which looks something like this, right? So you want to bring in this image into into OBS itself. So how do you do that? Excuse me. So under sources, remember you have to be under your face and PowerPoint scene. Click plus. This time you're going to choose image. Okay, and call it overlay. Click OK. Now you're going to select, browse, and go to the folder which you have stored your image. In this case, it's stored in my desktop. I'll just select this, scene 3 overlay, and click open. It should automatically fill up the screen. If it doesn't, you can go ahead and do the changes. That's right, and do the various adjustments. Okay, so now notice that the alignment of everything is out of whack, right? You see my face filling up the wrong boxes, so on and so forth. Now the idea here is to make sure that my face, right? The idea here is to make sure that my face fills up the smaller box and PowerPoint fills up the larger box. Okay, so how do I go about doing that? Now, when it comes to sources in OBS, the arrangement of those sources is very important. Okay, now, so what that means is that think of it as an arrangement in PowerPoint as well. Something has to go in the foreground, something has to go in the background in order for the image to work properly. And if you're familiar with Photoshop, think of it as layers, right? Layer 1, layer 2, layer 3. So in this case, the overlay would be the highest or the most forefront layer. And behind that is where you put in things like your PowerPoint, things like your webcam, okay, and any other materials that you want to bring in. So in this case, we have the overlay, which has 2 boxes for us to fill up. And behind those boxes would be the PowerPoint, as well as the smaller version of the webcam feed. Okay, so the idea here is that we need to now learn to do sizing adjustments to those PowerPoint and the webcam source in order for them to fit in those boxes. So let's jump right in and we'll get started on doing that. So let's first begin to arrange the webcam, all right, and make sure that the webcam fits into the smaller box over here. So when you click on the webcam, make sure that it is unlocked, okay? If you cannot make adjustments, make sure that you unlock it. Now what you want to do is you go to the corners of the red bar and you start dragging, okay? What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're filling up almost like a portrait mode. This is something that I'm okay with. There you go. I'm comfortable with how this looks. And if you're okay with this, don't worry about it spilling over the sides and all that. We can always rearrange that at a later stage. Okay, so if you're comfortable with how this looks, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want to shrink it to a point where it looks like that. Okay, now this is too small. This is very uncomfortable for anyone to view it. So you want it to stretch it and do it to such an extent. And once you're done, click anywhere outside of the red box, okay, and then lock it. Okay, so now you have your webcam adjusted. That really depends on, you may have to readjust it anytime you do a positional or configuration change. So just go ahead, go unlock it, click on your webcam, and you should be able to make changes again. So once you're done, lock it. Now you want to bring in the PowerPoint and readjust the PowerPoint. So click on this PowerPoint source, and here you need to do resizing again. Look for the corners and just see, okay, now this is too small, right? So drag it larger. And okay, I'm quite happy with how this looks. It's okay if it spills over the corners a little bit. Once you're done, click lock. Now, you might end up with a problem like that where your webcam is overlaying above your PowerPoint image. So what you want to do is drag the webcam source below PowerPoint. All right, so click on it, drag it underneath PowerPoint, and it should make it disappear. All right, let me repeat that. All right, click on it, drag it underneath PowerPoint, and it should disappear. All right, so now you've built up, this is the complete image, and this is how it looks like. All right, so you have, you're still able to control PowerPoint, and now you're able to show your face as you narrate along PowerPoint so that your students can basically have both your impressions and expressions and seeing the notes at the same time. So once you're done with this, you should have 3 scenes already completed at this point, which are, going back to this, would be your full screen. Right? Hi, hey, 1, 2, 3, right? You get all that impressions going on. Students can see your face, and then you want to focus on PowerPoint, you get to do that as well. And if you want to show both, you get to do that as well. So do keep in mind that the number of scenes that you can create up until this point is unlimited, okay? I've shown you 3, which is again, full screen, PowerPoint, and your face, right? And showing a full screen of your face. So up until this point, we've only created 3, but there's no limit to the number of scenes that you want to create. Say if you want to bring in a video, you want to bring in another source like a web browser, right? You can just simply keep duplicating, keep on creating as many scenes, as many windows as you want, so that you basically diversify your sources and create more dynamics within your teaching and within your lecture delivery. Okay, next up, I'm going to teach you how to further enhance the look of your video by adding more images. Okay, so you're pretty much good to go at this point. So what you want to do is you want to sort of further polish your image even more by adding what we call overlays or images. So let's just jump right in and show you how to do that. Okay, so now that we are back in OBS, if you look at this full screen scene over here, again, we have full screen, you have your PowerPoint, and we have your face and PowerPoint, right? Now, for face and PowerPoint it looks okay because you have more things to look at. But say if you want to include even more identity, corporate identity or branding into this, you want to add in more images and overlay. And the way you do that is by adding images, okay? So under a full screen face, what you want to do is we want to bring in logos and overlays into this shot over here. And you do that by adding images. So simply go to your source, click plus and image. Okay, now, right now you can call it logo and browse for the logo. In this case, I have the PSB logo here. Click OK. And you want to make some adjustments similar to how you make adjustments to earlier materials. So you want to adjust it, drag it to the corner, make sure you have space here. Okay. Now, if you're developing materials for us, this would be a compulsory step that you must do because, well, it is materials that is belonging to the organization. So you have to include some form of logo there, all right? Some form of corporate identity there. So going back to this would be, okay, so you have your logo here. Another one would be your module title overlay. The same thing, you want to bring in your, click on sources, bring in an image. So you're basically just repeating steps here. So you call it title. And now you search for the title of your module. Pretty simple. So let's say I'm teaching elements of communication. Okay, just click OK, open, and all right. So there you have it. So we have some sort of a title here, and it gives you some sort of a branding. And lock it, and there we go. So the idea here is that when you're using OBS for any other purposes, let's say if you're doing workshops for your own company, for your own branding, now you can incorporate things like logo overlays, company logos, corporate logos, titles, maybe email addresses, so on and so forth. You only need to create this in various other applications, such as maybe Photoshop or other image editors that you are used to. Create a PNG file, and then you bring in that PNG file over in image on OBS. Okay, so this is how it looks in the end. So you have something which has all your corporate image, corporate logos going in there. You have your PowerPoint, you have your face in PowerPoint, and with this alone, you should be able to deliver a pretty compelling lecture that is much more dynamic, much more different, right? Much more polished than a regular lecture that you deliver over a video conferencing tool. All right. So next up, I'll show you how to navigate around settings and to make sure that all your settings are correctly done before you start recording. Okay, so now we've reached the tail end of our training at this point. You've learned how to create scenes, you've learned how to create sources, arrange all your sources, make adjustments to all your sources, and make some audio adjustments as well. So now we're going to jump into settings and to see what are the minor tweaks and settings that is very important for you to take note of when you're running OBS. So let's just go right back into OBS, right? So now we're back in OBS full screen mode. And as you'll see, you have all your scenes, sources, and all your logos. Everything looks great right now, right? So before you actually start recording, there's a few things in settings that you want to make sure you get correct. So let's just jump and click on the settings tab. And there's a few tabs here. I'm not going to cover everything, but just a few important ones, yeah? So the first one would be under output. Now, if you're not streaming, you can basically ignore this first box right here. Just go straight to recording. And here you can set your recording path. Usually I will set it to desktop. Now what you can do is you can actually create a new folder within desktop. Let's say you want to call it OBS Recordings, which is typically what I normally do. Okay, you can create it. And this can be your recording path. As you notice, desktop OBS recording. That's the path that all the recorded files will go to. Next up would be the recording quality. Here you have a few choices. Normally you can stick to high quality, medium file sizes. You can also choose indistinguishable, which will bring larger file sizes. But what you never want to do is to go for lossless. Here is where the file size would be tremendously large and you have no way of storing it unless you have a really, really big external hard disk that you can plug into your computer, which most of us don't really have it, right? So just keep the recording quality to high or indistinguishable and that you should be good to go, all right? So keep it at high, and then here is where it's very important for you to remember recording format. There's a few choices that will show up under recording format, namely MOV, FLV, MKV, MP4. Okay, the format that is very familiar to us would be MP4. And naturally, we want to go to MP4 because of its easy playability on any computers or any platform. But the problem with MP4, okay, B1, is that should your recording crash or should your PC crash at any point of your recording, recording it in MP4 would mean that the file would be corrupted. So any recording up until that point, say your PC crashes at 30 minutes, right? The recording would be unusable and the file will be gone. So all your progress would be basically for nothing. So what you want to do is to keep your recording format at MKV. Okay, again I repeat, keep your recording format at MKV. So to choose that is pretty simple. Go to recording format and choose MKV as your format. Your encoder, if it's available to you, you want to choose hardware. But if it's not there, just choose software and it should be the same. Okay. Then click, once you're done with this, just repeat and glance through everything again. Recording path, quality on high, recording format on MKV, and encoder on software. Right, so that would be your first output settings. Next up would be your video setting. Your base canvas resolution should be set at 1920 by 1080. Sometimes it might default to 720. So if you're able to, choose the highest base canvas resolution, which is 1920 by 1080. If it is not available to you, just choose the highest one available to you and make adjustments to your OBS as and when necessary. Because if your base canvas resolution changes, everything else will have to be sort of readjusted to match that resolution. Okay, so that's your base canvas resolution. As for common FPS value, you want to set it to 30. Okay, if you're doing a recording for PSB Academy, if you're doing recording for our modules, then you want to set it to 30. Of course, if you're doing it for your own keeping, for your own files, you can set it to as low as 25. That would give it a more filmic look. But generally for education, for learning, you want to set it at a smoother rate, which is at 30. Okay, so 30 FPS, that would be your common value. Once you're done, click OK. Now you're going to go on hotkeys. Okay, so again, we've talked about output, we've touched on video, and now we're going to go to hotkeys. Here is where your life is going to be made much easier. Now, until this point, every time we need to change a scene, we have to click on those individual scenes, using our mouse, using our cursor to look for it and click for it for those individual scenes to be activated, right? In order to prevent that, or an easier way around that would be setting keyboard shortcuts for tagging it to those individual scenes so that every time you press on those keystrokes, the scenes will be activated. So I'll show you what that means right now. Okay, so going back to OBS, as you scroll down under hotkeys, you'd notice that the titles of your scenes will show up right here. Okay, so you have face and PPT, full screen face, and PowerPoint, right? All your scenes will show up here. So what you want to do is corresponding it directly with the arrangement of your scenes. So you notice that full screen face is the first scene, PowerPoint is the second, face and PowerPoint will be the third. So what I want to do is basically assign the keyboard of 1, 2, and 3, the number 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard to all these individual scenes right here. So going with full screen face first, you look for the switch to scene column, click on it, and press number 1. Okay, once you're done, go to the PowerPoint column and press number 2. And then finally, face and PowerPoint, press number 3. And once you're done, click OK. Okay. Now what should happen is that every time I press the keyboard number of 1, 2, and 3, it should change the scene automatically for me. So let me try it right now. So now I'm going to press number 2 and it should show PowerPoint. There you go. Press number 3, face and PowerPoint. Press back number 1, going back to my full screen face. So the idea here is that you don't really have to use your mouse to look for those keystrokes. You just have to use your hand, and after some time, it will develop to become some sort of a muscle memory for you. And all you need to do is just navigate around 1, 2, and 3 to change your scenes. So using shortcuts and keystrokes like that is very helpful when you actually need to focus on teaching rather than looking at your screen, looking at where everything is. Considering how small all these letters are, it would be straining to your eyes. So just reach out your fingers, and pressing 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard will help out greatly. Okay? So going back to this, again, 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So just to give a recap of all these settings that we've talked about, we have your output, recording path, all right, recording quality, recording format, making sure that it's on MKV, encoder, so on and so forth. You have your video of your base canvas resolution, FPS value to be kept at 30, hotkeys, that's where you keep your keyboard shortcuts of 1, 2, and 3. And under advanced, there's nothing much you need to do there, just ignore it. And you're basically done. Okay? So all that's left now is basically for you to begin recording and test whether everything works fine. So to basically wrap up the entire video, let's do a trial recording next. Okay, so the last thing for us to do now is to basically do a test recording and to see where the file ends up. Try playing it back, and if it works fine, then you're basically done and good to go for your OBS recording. So let's do a trial run now and see how everything turns out. All right. So now we are back to my desktop right here. You see I have 3 windows open. One which is OBS. Okay. One which is the PowerPoint. And finally a folder where the recording should end up once I start and stop the recording. Okay. So just to start testing, this is basically the interface that you should be working with every time you work with OBS. So you have OBS on one window, your PowerPoint on another window, and your files on another window. So let's just start recording and see where it goes. Okay, so under the controls button here, I'll just click start recording. I'll go testing 1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to OBS. This is my name is Aaron, and I hope you've enjoyed the training so far. This is my PowerPoint slide, which I'll show you. Elements of communications, sender, encode, message. And this is also the PowerPoint slide where you see myself and the face. And again, thank you for watching, and I'll stop recording right now. And there you go. And you notice that you already have an MKV file here under OBS recordings. And if I were to double click it, so as you notice, it's playing back fine, no issues. Some of you might want to play back the video in your computer, on your phone, and you want to change the format after recording back to MP4. Now you can do that in OBS. So as a final tip to the video, let me just show you how you can reformat an MKV file into an MP4 format for easier playback. Now, in order to do that, you want to go to OBS and click on File. All right. Under File, you will see the option of Remux Recordings. Here is where you can reformat an MKV file into an MP4 file. So click on Remux, and you see this window pop up. All right. Now, under OBS Recording, click on these three dots over here. Search for the folder that you store all your MKV recordings at. So click on OBS Recording. So this is the file that we've just recorded earlier on. Click Open, and then click Remux. The target file will always be the same folder as your OBS recordings. So click on Remux, and OK, and now you have an MP4 file ready for you. So if you were to just look at this file over here, click Playback. This would be an easier playback. Now you can share this file in whether it's a Blackboard or your phone or OneDrive. It should be a much more friendly codec and a much more friendly format for you to play back in any other software. Okay, even if you want to upload it to YouTube, that's really your choice. Okay, or if you want to edit the file in any editing software, MP4 is a much friendlier codec for you to work with. So now you have that option to convert MKV into MP4 after you've completed your recording. So all said and done, this is a much more safer workflow so that you will not risk losing any file because you want to record something in MP4. Okay, so all in all, this is basically it for the OBS recording, OBS training. Hope you find this video useful. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email and ask me, because obviously I can't possibly cover everything in this video. So if you encounter any technical difficulties, any issues going on with the audio or video, just a simple Google search would usually help. If not, simply drop me an email and I'll try to respond to you as soon as I can. So I hope you find this video useful, and I'll see you around soon.